Well, good evening. Welcome to StoriesRoc, and an evening of stories about hot fun in the summertime. And aren't you glad we had a nice hot day so we could all be in the mood for stories about heat with no rain? Okay, our first teller is a familiar face here at StoriesRoc. Richard Lunt is a retired history professor. He paints marvelous watercolors. His apartment is lined with these amazing, it looks like a museum in there, an art museum. It's just really quite spectacular. He loves to hike and sail and travel, and he has a wealth of stories that he shared with us here at StoriesRoc. And a little known fact about Richard: if you go to Highland Park in the early spring, you will see a magnificent weeping cherry tree that he planted in honor of his late wife, Ruth. It is spectacular. Tonight, he will read a story, he will tell a story called Going to the Sun. Richard.
I move around, you know. Going to the Sun. In September of 2003, my wife Carmel and I went to Glacier National Park. And I had been there as a child, and I had many fond memories of that experience. I wanted to share them with Carmel. My late wife's sister, Olive, she lived nearby. And the idea was we would go to the park first and take the Going to the Sun highway up over the pass and see Olive. On September 3rd, we flew into Bozeman, Montana. Now, Bozeman, Montana is known for its beautiful blue skies and crystal clear air. But it's also equally well known for its forest fires. And there have been days of forest fires. And when we flew into Bozeman and looked out the window of the airplane, we could hardly see the town. We stepped off the airplane, and the smoke just bit into our eyes, into our nostrils. That night, miraculously, thunderstorms raged through western Montana, doused the whole area, and the fires were put out. That morning when we awoke, the sky was blue and the air was fresh. We drove in our rental car to the eastern entrance of Glacier Park. We rented a log cabin in an aspen grove, and we had a beautiful view of snow-capped Chief Mountain. The next morning, we drove to the ranger station to get our trail maps. While we were there, the ranger came up to us and said, I should caution you, there can be snowstorms coming up quickly in the mountains, especially this time of year. Well, I looked at the weather forecast for the 2 weeks we were going to be there. It was going to be high in the 60s, low in the 40s. I really didn't think it was going to be a problem. For several days, we had beautiful hikes. We went to glaciers, we saw waterfalls, we saw wonderful lakes. We saw a brown bear. We saw a moose with her calf, and her calf just stared and stared at us. And then we saw emperor swans. They were swimming so gracefully over a pond. On the 16th, it was our day to leave Glacier, to drive up on Going to the Sun highway, go over the pass, and see Olive. I got up, I looked out the window. There was a light coating of snow on the grass. We parked the car, got in the car, drove off, and I turned on the radio for the weather forecast. A cold front has swept through Montana last night. There will be a light coating of snow in the morning in the mountains, not more than 1 inch. The daytime highs will be in the mid-30s. The lows will be in the 20s. We drove down to the eastern entrance. I paid my entrance fee. And I looked at the board, the posted weather forecast on the board. And clear, the road was going to be clear all the way. And the temperature was going to be 34 degrees. It was Carmel's turn to drive. She slipped into the driver's seat. And for the first 5 miles, we had this glorious view of St. Mary Lake. St. Mary Lake is surrounded by snow-capped mountains going up 10,000 feet. After a while, the road narrows. The road is cut out of the mountainside, so the road narrows. We stopped the car and looked over the edge. It was straight down. There was a low rock wall to keep cars from going over. But as we drove along, we noticed that the wall isn't present everywhere. Some places there is no wall. The car went up higher in elevation, and I began to notice that the snow was beginning to stick to the pavement. I leaned over to look at the outside temperature gauge. Carmel noticed, "Hey, what are you doing?" "I'm checking out the temperature. It's 32 degrees. We went higher, and the snow was beginning to build up a little bit on the pavement, and coming down a little bit heavier. The temperature now dropped to 30 degrees. 20 minutes passed. We are now above the timberline, and the snow is coming down very, very heavily. It was 28 degrees. We could hardly see oncoming cars. So we had to slow down to 5 miles an hour. The snow was building up into a heavy slush, and the road became very slippery. And the car started sliding back and forth, and the wheels started spinning. Richard, the car's sliding! My inner macho self took over. Richard, Carmel is inexperienced in driving in snow. She's pressing the accelerator too hard. Take over. Hon, at the next overlook, why don't you park the car and I'll be glad to drive. She parked the car in the overlook. I got out of the passenger seat and walked around to the other side. Stepped into the driver's seat, buckled my seatbelt. Took a deep breath. Shifted into drive, putting my foot as lightly on the accelerator as I could. And the wheels spun, and they spun, and they spun, and I couldn't stop them. Edging out of the parking lot, with the wheels spinning, I'm going to cross the road into the right side lane, going up the mountain. The wheels spinning like crazy. The car making it okay, but now the grade increases, and that combined with these heavy slush brought the car to a complete, oh shit, it's not working! I downshift, and the shock of downshifting made the car move, but not forward. Instead sideways, instead across the other traffic coming down the mountain and headed towards the overlook. And there is no low rock wall to keep the car from going over. The car is sliding towards the edge of the cliff. I tried touching the brakes lightly, it doesn't work. I tried downshifting, it doesn't work. I looked through the windshield of blowing snow, hoping to see a branch of a tree, a bush, anything that will stop the car. There's nothing. Then the car stopped. We got out of the car quickly, put on our coats, and then looked back. The front bumper was over the edge. A passing car stopped, and the driver got out and put a rock under the left rear wheel. We stood for shivering for about 10 minutes in the snow, And then finally a snowplow came. The driver stopped. He stared at our car and then spoke to us. Hey, how you guys doing? Oh, we're okay. We're cold. Come into the truck, warm up. Then he got on his radio, closed the highway, ordered an evacuation. He called in a tow truck to come and rescue our car. He spoke to a trail crew, asked them to stop and pick us up with our luggage and take us down to the lodge at St. Mary to meet the tow truck. It took 2 hours for the tow truck to get to the lodge. And I signed the papers, to get the authorized him to tow the car and everything. And then he said, "Would you like to go up with me?" Oh no, I'm
That's okay.
3 hours later, he brought back the car. I called Olive to let her know that we were going to be delayed. Hi, Olive. How are you doing? Oh, I'm glad you're well. And how's Roger? Oh, he's good too. Oh, we're fine. We're doing well. But did you hear about that big storm and the going to the Center Highway? You didn't. It was a whopper. And we got stuck in it. And we're going to be here for at least another couple of days, I think, before we can get out of here. But we'll make it, and we'll get to see you. And Carmela's looking forward to meeting you. And take care. Goodbye. Love you.